Hi everyone, it's been ages since we've done a video for our YouTube channel, and we've decided that today we're going to do one, and it's a bit of a help video for Gadgets John on Tour. I'll leave a link to their video channel up here. We haven't made a video for some time, and partly that reason is because during our trip to Brazil and beyond, we had some terrible technical problems. We had computers fail, we had cameras fail, we sent a camera back to Sony, it took ages to get repaired, and then it took ages to get back to us, only to work for 2 weeks and fail again. So we sort of chucked all the video in hard drives and said we'll sort that out sometime later. And we actually promise now we've got a bit of time on our hands, we're going through all the footage and we're going to put together the last of the videos of our Brazil and beyond tour, taking you right through up to the end of last summer when we left the boat in Annapolis. And we came back to Portugal, to our house here, and we've been madly sort of getting on with things and getting ready for the next phase of our journey. And the next phase of our journey includes this thing. We'll show you more about this a bit later, probably in another couple of videos. But this is a motorhome that we've recently bought. We bought it just before the coronavirus, and we were getting ready to go touring around to discover the inland parts of countries that we never really got a chance to see from the boat. And we decided to buy a motorhome and tour off around Europe. Well, we just got to wait a little bit for that. But in the meantime, having bought the motorhome, we needed to put all the bits and pieces in that we particularly wanted to make it sort of right for what we wanted to do. One of the things that we wanted to put in was an inverter to enable us to run mains items, recharge laptops, cameras, various other bits and pieces while we were travelling. I started to look at the install. Now, this is a German motorhome. It's made by the same people. It's a Heimer Group production. It's actually a Detlef's motorhome. John's one is a Bürstner. Well, Bürstner, Heimer, Detlef's, all very, very similar in construction. So things that apply to one are going to generally apply to that range of motorhomes. So if you've got one of those motorhomes, you want to put an inverter in, then you need to watch this video, because there's some very important things that you have to make sure you do. You could just put the inverter in and stick it on the side and have an extension lead plugged into it. But people generally want to make things a little bit neater than that. They want to power the existing sockets, probably put in a few extra sockets, so that it's all nice and neat and the power is exactly where you want it. And this is exactly what John wanted to do. And he found, as I found, that when we started to look at the install, the way the Germans work their system is the power comes in to the shore power inlet just here. That plugs in and it runs all the way back to the consumer unit. Consumer unit has protection devices in it, residual current device which shuts the power off if there's an earth fault within the system. There's also an overcurrent trip. There's only one, and this is where the problem lies. The consumer unit only has this one breaker in it, and the problem there is that all the circuits in the motorhome go through that one breaker. Now, there are circuits in the motorhome that you do not want to run on the inverter. First of all, the fridge. The power to the fridge should not be connected via your inverter, because as soon as you switch the inverter on, the automatic system on the fridge is going to select the fridge to run on electric, as it would do, because it's the main priority. That's now coming off your batteries. That's not going to be very good. The water heater has a mains circuit powered element in it. You don't want to run that off of the batteries, because that again is going to deplete your batteries very, very quickly. The charger definitely doesn't want to be running while the inverter's kicked in, because it will just set up this sort of infinite cycle of charging, inverting, charging and inverting, charging and inverting until your batteries run out. So items like that you need to separate. Now the way they wire things on these German motorhomes is they come out from a single breaker, run a cable down each side of the motorhome to a central point, and then they have a distribution connection, which is like a Christmas tree with power going in the bottom and little special connectors all the way up it going out to the individual circuits. And what you have to do is you have to find that, isolate the supplies to the sockets that you want, remove them from that Christmas tree, and then connect them to your inverter. And that can either be through some sort of automatic changeover switch directly to the inverter if you want, or by some sort of manual system of switching between the inverter and the mains coming in. So we're going to show you today how to find these things and how to wire it all up so that it works properly. So come on inside and we'll start pulling the motorhome apart and show you where these things are. Right, so the first thing that we're going to do is to find the consumer unit, and that on this motorhome happens to be right underneath where you are, under the bed. So we're going to find where these Christmas trees are, and this is roughly the middle of the motorhome. This is our fridge. Underneath it we have a cupboard, a drawer, slide out drawer. As with all motorhomes, it's going to be full up. I know it's going to be full up when I open it. Yep, sure enough it is. So I'll quickly pull the stuff out. And you can always get a glamorous assistant to help you. Except I haven't got a glamorous assistant.
Steve still believes in the cleaning fairy.
Okay, once we've got the drawer empty, we can press the two little buttons underneath and by moving it backwards and forwards, pull it out. And I'll just take it away, stick it on the bed. Yep, underneath there's a whole load of wires. Okay, so this is what we're looking for, this item here. And I've already done the conversion here, so I can show you exactly what I did. But basically the power comes in through this female plug or socket, plugs into the bottom of the Christmas tree, and then powers the various circuits out from the Christmas tree. In this particular situation on this side of the motorhome, I've identified that these three go to three of the sockets that I want, that I wish to power from the inverter. This cable is actually coming up from my inverter and goes in and powers now these three sockets here. The original cable that went into here is now this one, and this now powers two circuits that I don't wish the inverter to power. One of them is the fridge, which is above me here, and the other one is one socket that I've chosen at the back of the motorhome that I don't want the inverter to power. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on, but just remember there's one socket I don't want the inverter to be used on, and that remains then just a socket which is always on the hookup, and that's very, very important to bear in mind. So to identify the sockets, I've used one of these simple socket testers. It shows you when various states of the socket are operating, i.e. at the top it's showing you've got 3 red lights, it shows you the socket is correct. 2 red lights means there's no earth, etc, etc, and explains what it does there. Very, very simple to do. All we have to do is to take this item, open up the socket, and of course these are German or European standard sockets, and I've got a converter on the end of my little tester. And as I push it in, I don't know whether the camera is going to pick it up, but we now have 3 lights on here. So these are the little plugs that go into the Christmas trees that go off to the various circuits, and very simple. There's a screw that holds the cover together, which actually clamps the cable, and inside there are 3 little connections to the neutral, earth and live connections. One thing they do have is there's a little clip that when these are plugged into the Christmas tree locates itself in this little square hole and stops the plug from falling out, and you have to sort of poke a screwdriver into that and just push it out slightly to release that so it unplugs. It's not difficult, well, it is difficult because you've seen where they are and you've got to get in there and do it. One thing I will tell you is that around that Christmas tree there are normally 3 or 4 cable ties holding them all into place. The one thing about these motorhomes, they are exceptionally well built, and they're very, very neat and tidy with all their cabling, making sure it's all wrapped up and it's cable tied well. It's very easy for them to do when they're putting it together. It's not so easy to do when you're trying to get it out. And what you have to do is to cut those cable ties so you can get a little bit more access to these plugs in the Christmas tree unit. Okay, so I've said that in this motorhome, German motorhome, there are 2 of these items. My glamorous assistant has said I've got to show him where the other one is. So that means I've got to pack all the drawer back up, put it all away and find the other one, which will be on the other side of the motorhome. What's the bets this doesn't all fit? I'm amazed how easily it comes out and how difficult it is to put it all back in. Am I going to make it? Am I running out of space? 2 more items to go.
Packing cupboards is a pink job.
Fantastic. There you go. So the second one's going to be over the other side of the motorhome, round about the middle of the motorhome. Going to be under here, under the sink area. Now this one is slightly more difficult because it's very, very difficult to get the bottom drawer out. And what I'm going to do is just remove the middle drawer, like so. Stick him away. And then we can have a look in the bottom. So, slide the bottom drawer out. And over the back there, again, we can see the other Christmas tree with the various sockets plugged into it. And if you look down the bottom there, I don't know if we can get a little bit more light on that bottom, can we? So you can see it. You can see where I've removed. This time it's the supply for the charger that I've removed from the Christmas tree. I've brought my wiring from the inverter to the bottom of the Christmas tree, which is that one over there. I can't quite reach it. And these things are really, really difficult to get to. And you do have to be very careful when working inside the motorhomes, because all this stuff, all this timber and everything, it's really fragile, and if you start leaning on it, it's going to break. But that's basically it. That's what you've got to do. You've got to get in there, disconnect the identify which one is the charger, or whichever circuit you don't wish to power off the inverter, remove it from the Christmas tree, and then run a cable from the inverter to the bottom of the Christmas tree to distribute through the various other items that are plugged in. And then the cable that comes out, which actually comes from the consumer unit, from that breaker I showed you earlier, and then it's connected, in this case, directly to the cable that goes off to the charger. Okay, so on this example of motorhome, I've shown you that we don't want to supply power to the fridge, we don't want to supply power to one particular socket, and we don't want to supply power to the charger. And I've shown you how we've isolated those supplies from the Christmas tree multi-connector that are built into these German motorhomes. You're all going to be saying, what about the water heater? What about the electric water heater? Unfortunately, in this motorhome, we don't have the electric option on the water heater. It's purely a gas system, so we didn't have to worry about that. So there is one other socket that we decided we didn't want to power from the inverter, and I'm going to show you that one now. It's right down here. Why didn't we want to power this socket from the inverter? Well, what will eventually happen, and I can't show you that at the moment because we didn't manage to get the bits of kit before all the coronavirus locked down, but what will eventually happen is the inverter and the shore supply will be linked through an automatic changeover switch. What happens there is when you plug into the shore supply, the switch senses that and switches the power from the inverter to the shore supply. When you disconnect the shore supply, it senses the shore supply has gone out and it switches over to the inverter. Even if the inverter's not on, it will just switch over and wait for the inverter to be next switched on. When the inverter's next switched on, all the sockets that you have chosen, remember going back to the Christmas tree and the various plugs and isolating the right cables, all those sockets will run off the inverter. If you use that system and you're plugged in to a shore supply, say in the winter, the motorhome knows you're plugged into the shore supply and you think, oh great, this is good, I'll plug in my heater, my electric heater. Unfortunately, everybody else on the campsite has decided to do the same thing. It gets quite cold and they turn the heater up a bit and the load on the campsite goes through the roof. At about 10 o'clock at night, bang, the whole campsite goes out. I know this happens because we used to own a campsite, and the number of times at 11 o'clock that we had to go out and reset all the power because everyone's heaters had kicked in because the temperature has suddenly gone down, you wouldn't believe. But of course what can happen, if it goes bang in a serious way, it can blow the fuse box off the wall, and I've seen fuse boxes fly across rooms, you know, where the fuses have exploded and the whole thing has just destroyed itself, in which case you can't reset it. But your motorhome has switched over to the inverter because the shore supply's gone off. It didn't know that you didn't unplug the shore supply, it just sensed that the shore supply failed, so it switches on to the inverter. That's what it's designed to do. You're sitting in your motorhome watching your favourite soap opera or whatever on your television, you don't notice that the whole campsite has gone dark, and what's happening now is your heater is running off your batteries, and your batteries are going down and down and down until it's dead. Well, that's not too bad, you say. They plug into the electric, they'll charge up. The fuse ball's blown off the wall, they can't get anyone to come and repair it for 2 days. You now have no electric in your motorhome. You can't run your gas heating because all the gas heaters require electricity to run. You're stuffed. So, by having one socket that isn't connected to the inverter at any time, if you want to run a heater in the winter, and then when the campsite goes down, all that happens is your heater stops running. The rest of the motorhome switches to the inverter, but those loads are normally quite small. If it's running the television, it's only a few watts. You charging your mobile phones or whatever, only a few watts. You are going to notice that the heater has stopped working, and you're going to investigate why it stopped working. You'll stick your head out and you'll see the whole campsite is black, and you'll realise that the power has gone out completely. So make sure not all of your sockets are through the inverter, and keep one socket where you can plug in a high powered heating device if you need it, that won't ever trip on to the inverter, and that's a really important thing to do. I've actually been on campsites where people have had automatic changeover systems with their inverter, and at 12 o'clock you see them scratching their head, oh, my electric's gone on a camper and I can't understand why. There you go. So that's it really. Oh, I'll tell you what, we just do a quick shot, a couple of shots of the actual inverter. I can't show you the connection system because I said we didn't have all the bits and pieces, but I will explain there's one or two ways you can do it. So let's go and have a look at the inverter. So we have the inverter, it's bolted onto the side of the passenger side front seat. Remember, this is a left-hand drive foreign motorhome, so it's just bolted on here and then it's wired directly into the battery, which happens to be below the passenger seat on this motorhome. This plug here, which I'll unplug, goes off to those two Christmas tree distribution panels that we showed you earlier. And what will happen is I have several options. I've left plenty of cable on this, and I have an option of sticking a socket down here which will come directly off the incoming shore supply. So as a manual way, I can unplug it from there, plug it into that socket, and then I power all my sockets directly from the incoming shore supply. So another option is to put a double pole, double throw switch in this line and out to the incoming supply, so that you can switch it from shore supply to inverter, or use an automatic changeover switch. The automatic changeover switch is the luxury item, and the plug and the socket is the poor man's item. I'm going to be using the plug and the socket. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time, and we'll try and bring you some more bits and pieces of putting stuff in the motorhome, doing bits and pieces to the motorhome, and a few trips. We do have a few trips in the can, local trips we think will be quite interesting to people here in Portugal when you can eventually get back here. And we'll also, as we get the other bits and pieces that we need to finish off the inverter installation, bits of other installation, we'll make sure we make films about it and put those up as well. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and keep self-isolating.